Thank you all so much for joining me today. It is good to be back. It is September the 9th, I believe. And as I said, I'd be back in September. So here I am. It's taking me a little longer to get here than I thought it would. I tried to record this Modern Warfare video like a dozen times. As it turns out, even when you go from like, I'm doing this as a serious job to I'm doing this as a hobby on the side, the imposter syndrome just never goes away. So yeah, we're gonna try and make it through this commentary with as little self-doubt as possible. At the end of the video, I'm gonna be talking a little bit about, you know, just some housekeeping, if you will, talking a little bit about the channel going forward for those of you guys who may have missed the video I made like 2 months ago, kind of talking about where things were going. So if you want to stick around for that, awesome. Today we're going to be focusing primarily on the gunplay and core gameplay experience of Modern Warfare 2019, as I personally got to experience it for about 40 hours during the open alpha on PlayStation 4. We're not going to talk about the gunfight game mode. That was the only mode available to us in the alpha. It's also going to be available in the beta that starts on PS4 this week, alongside of the other regular 6v6 modes and the realism, tactical realism mode they're having in there. I'm going to save that for another video, possibly after the beta. I will say this, gunplay is absolutely incredible. It is one of my favorite modes in an FPS ever, and I think it's one of the best competitive modes Call of Duty has ever had. I think it's one of the best competitive modes in a first-person shooter, and I think it will be incredibly sad if 2v2 doesn't make its way into the competitive Call of Duty scene, especially on the big stage, alongside of, you know, their take on Search and Destroy for Modern Warfare 2019, which I think is called like Cyber Warfare or something like that. This is a mode that deserves to be played at a high competitive level, and that deserves to be made available for people to watch it played at a highly competitive level, because it is a lot of fun to watch people play gunplay. It's just one of those modes that works so well. If you have any experience with speedball, whether it's via paintball or airsoft, you will feel right at home in gunplay, and I think that's part of what makes it so special. So again, another video for that. Let's move in and talk about the gameplay of Modern Warfare 2019. I'm just gonna lay out like the real big, bold, them's fighting words at the start here, and then we'll talk forward. Modern Warfare, as I experienced it in terms of its raw gameplay and gunplay, is one of, if not the best first-person shooters I have ever played. The team at Infinity Ward has truly evolved Call of Duty's gunplay. They've essentially taken it beyond whatever it was before. Since the original Modern Warfare, they pushed it in an entirely new direction while still maintaining that sort of accessible entry point that Call of Duty gunplay has always had. But unlike previous Call of Duty entries, the gunplay is actually interesting. It's exciting, it's challenging, it's rewarding. There's a learning curve behind each and every firearm available in the game, and you can further tweak and modify those firearms and the way they perform with a massive pool of loadouts via Gunsmith, which will be available for all of us to go hands-on with in the beta this month. They've just done some really spectacular stuff here, and for the first time, I believe that Call of Duty, its identity, a part of its identity when people talk about Call of Duty, is actually going to be its gunplay. Because for me, Modern Warfare forward, the last like 10 years, when I think Call of Duty gunplay, I think, yeah, sure. You shoot bullets out of guns that often feel like hoses, and they don't really ever go beyond that. In terms of learning curves and like the skill ceiling regarding firearms in Call of Duty, it hasn't really ever done anything special. If a weapon is challenging to use in Call of Duty, it's either because it's a single shot bolt action sniper rifle, or it's really weak and you use it because you want to challenge yourself with a suppressed 5.7 in Black Ops 2. You know, like, it's not challenging because there's a recoil pattern that is extremely present, because it fires 7.62 and it's automatic and you've got to learn how to manage that, and it really kicks like a freaking horse. It just never was the case with Call of Duty. I think Call of Duty's identity was always made up of like the overarching experience, that sort of arcade shooter, lots of kills, people worrying about their kill-death ratio, just, you know, utter chaos, small maps like Nuketown, the kill streaks themselves and how those evolved over the years. And then as it the franchise managed to live year after year after year, it became a matter of like, how can we as a studio, the different teams working on Call of Duty each and every year, make enough of a change that it's still Call of Duty, but it's like a little different, right? Oh, jetpacks and jump kits and wall running. We're in space. And sometimes that shit was really cool, but it didn't necessarily mean that it pushed Call of Duty forward in a new direction and once again did what Modern Warfare, the original, did for the franchise way back then. You know, Call of Duty was like a World War II shooter. And then Modern Warfare came along and was just like, hey, we're doing a modern take. Plus, we're just going to completely redesign what it is to be Call of Duty. Modern Warfare 2019 feels like it's doing that. It's kind of unfortunate that just bears the same name as the OG, but maybe it also makes sense that things are coming full circle with the original title name. So let's talk a little bit more about that gunplay and why I think it feels as good as it does, why I think it works as well as it does. First and foremost, let's talk animations. There's a lot of bits and pieces that make the shooting experience in Modern Warfare as good as it is. You know, the audio plays a big part in all of it. It's very loud, it's very in your face. I love it. It might be a little bit too loud sometimes, but I still love it. But the animations are, I think, what bring it all together, because when you turn off the audio on Modern Warfare and you just watch a weapon reload or you watch a weapon fire, it's still a beautiful, mesmerizing thing, even without the audio to follow it up. You know, you see the muzzle flash, you watch the weapon kick, you watch the recoil make the end of the barrel dance around. And then when that magazine is empty, you hit the reload button and you just watch a symphony of delight. The reload animations in this game are a spectacular thing. And there's a really great interview with the animation lead at Infinity Ward on Modern Warfare over on Game Informer. I've got a link to that video down in the description below. It's not too long. I strongly recommend you watch it if you want some insight into the design and sort of thought process of Modern Warfare, specifically the weapon reload animations. The team went for something very deliberate here. They wanted to, once again, dive into that realism term and look at real-world animation techniques and then apply those to the in-game experience. And they did that by hand-tooling all of their weapon reload animations. Nothing is mocapped. Everything is hand-tooled and designed to look and perform and execute in a very specific way. And that means when you reload a shotgun in this game, it's just a beautiful thing. You just watch the player just inserting shell after shell, and the audio follows in suit, and then, you know, pop back that slide. It's just, oh, it's all so good. There's not one bad reload animation in the entire friggin' game. It just never ends. And it means that even when you're not shooting things, you're still really enjoying that first-person perspective. It's just nice to see a first-person shooter that is genuinely going above and beyond to make sure the player is constantly indulged while they're in that first-person perspective, and just watching the little bits on the rifles float around or on your submachine gun strap bobbling around, and then just hitting that reload button every time. It's just like, yes, I get to reload. It's a really cool thing. And I think it just kind of follows through with the rest of the gameplay design in Modern Warfare, in that I think the word deliberate or predictable applies a lot here. You know, like, everything has been designed in a way to replicate the essence of the real world counterpart, whether it's an activity or a technique or a tactic or a weapon or an item. It's not to say that it's been done in a 100% simulation based manner, right? At the, you know, potentially at the loss of fun for the sake of realism, but it's such a strong baseline that it just immediately feels recognizable, especially if you have any experience with, you know, different weapon calibers or projectiles in video games or in the real world or anywhere for that matter. It means that everything you do in this game, I think, feels that much better because you almost expect it to. That said, I imagine if you knew absolutely nothing about firearms, you would still boot this game up, pull the trigger, and be like, wow, that feels incredible. It just means that each weapon has its own unique performance, and there's a plethora of things via the gunsmith, which we didn't get to mess around with in Gunfight, but we did get a randomly selection of firearms from Infinity Ward for a gunsmith. It means that all those little bits and bobs affect the weapon and further allow it to have, like, performance diversity not just from weapon to weapon, but within one weapon platform. So as you shorten the barrel on an M13 rifle, you get a little bit more recoil, you get a little bit less stability, but your handling improves. The same thing goes with adding foregrips, extending the barrel, putting on different muzzle brakes, suppressors, different optics, different stock types. All of these things are going to influence the weapon's performance, but they seem to do so in a very predictable manner. Everything just makes sense, and that includes the way the weapons handle and feel, and the areas in which they excel, sort of their pros and cons in terms of performance across the wide variety of situations you might find yourself in during a match of Modern Warfare. So, for example, let's talk about the sort of never-ending disparity between submachine guns and assault rifles, which seem to be able to do all of the jobs that DMRs, assault rifles, shotguns, and SMGs can do. That's been Call of Duty's biggest issue when it comes to weapon balancing, and I think a lot of it comes down to the lack of an actual learning curve for individual weapons and the recoil patterns in previous Call of Duties. Everything was very stat-driven, very like RPG, just pull the trigger, the weapon does what it does. It's all about who gets first shot, and if you miss one bullet, sometimes it doesn't even matter because this gun's just that good everywhere. You would typically have certain assault rifles in Call of Duty for the last 10 years that could just excel in close quarters, where the SMGs, or the shotguns even, should have been reigning supreme. We now have that weapon diversity in Modern Warfare. Submachine guns like the MP7 and the MP5 have insane fire rates, but are highly controllable, and they provide the player with exceptional handling, movement, strafe speeds, jump recovery, all of that stuff. Everything you would want if you're going to be aggressive and fast and make crazy pushes now comes packed with those SMGs. And while they don't have the penetrating power, especially through surfaces, even like wood or the side of a shipping container, if you can get shots on a body, you're just going to absolutely rip that person to pieces. It's going to take quite a few more rounds than an AK would, but you've got that massive handling advantage. It makes a huge difference in this game, and you feel it immediately. And again, when we talk about setting expectations here, when I'm equipped with an MP5 or an MP7, I expect it to be able to let me really whip around and move. If somebody comes up behind me, I want to have that rotation speed, that ADS speed, to get on target and to let loose and to win those gunfights where maybe I didn't have first to fire advantage. Submachine guns finally give you that. It feels fantastic. When we talk about assault rifles, yeah, they've got serious range output. Even single fire, you can toggle a lot of the weapons in this game from burst fire or auto fire to single fire. And some of the M4 variants are great for that. Some of them are very controllable in auto at long ranges. Some of them have a lot more kick. You pick up an AK, it's got big, juicy recoil. It hits like a truck. It has incredible penetrating power. They have like the L8 in here, the British bullpup assault rifle. That's in here. That thing will absolutely rip through the side of a shipping container like a submachine gun never could. And those things matter a lot. Penetration feels more important in this Call of Duty than it has in any other COD. Like hitting someone through the wall, a wall bang as people refer to it, is a really useful tactic for pulling people out of cover. And in gunfights specifically, it is deeply encouraged, and it is wicked satisfying when it happens. Somebody's behind that wooden barrier, and you just need to get them out of there. They're really complacent. They've got positional advantage. You just start letting them rip. You punch a hole through the side of that shipping container to wall check and see if someone's hiding there. The AK, the big guns are good at doing that, but in close quarters, they do not have the ADS speeds, the hip fire accuracy, just the general handling performance that a submachine gun has. It finally feels like there's like a proper difference between the two. One is actually good in an area where the other one isn't, and vice versa. When we talk about shotguns, shotguns are viable. They're exceptionally satisfying to use, but you now have that sort of very don't miss mind game that you get with a shotgun like you do in Gears of War. Gears of War, the shotgun play there is very much about landing those shots. It's about making that dodge, that strafe, that wall bounce, that wall slide to force the other player to miss their shot. It's the same situation here with shotguns. Being first to fire, always important, but if you can outplay someone through sliding or just good cover positioning and make your shots count, you're going to win that shotgun fight. Shotgun versus shotgun in gunfight was exceptionally fun to do. Some of the shotguns have really big ranges. Like, shotguns are no joke anymore. This isn't going to be a situation where it's like, I've got to run all of the stealth perks I possibly can in Call of Duty and crouch all day long because it's nearly impossible to get up to someone and actually kill them with a shotgun, right? Like, shotguns rip. And if you have the hunting shotgun that was available in the alpha with the choke and the long barrel on it, you can do some serious damage with that thing. It just finally feels like they have a role, they matter, they're viable. You can have a shotgun loadout, and it can be super good. I mean, plain and simple. It can be super effective, it can be satisfying, and again, all the weapons just really feel fantastic because of things like animation design and audio design and, you know, the visual effects of the weapon. There's a lot of incredible details in this game that people are going to start pointing out, especially as we get into the open beta. For example, having a different muzzle attachment on the end of your barrel affects the way that the muzzle flash performs. So if you've got a muzzle brake that is supposed to direct the exhaust, the actual, you know, gases coming out of the end of the barrel when you fire that weapon, and it's supposed to push up to force the gun down to help you manage recoil, it actually does that. You'll see that visually on that muzzle brake. It's incredible. The game is loaded with stuff like that. It's not just there for the sake of show, it's there to indicate that something is working the way it was intended, which is a really cool feeling. Let's talk a little bit more about time to kill. You know, I sort of mentioned first to fire being important here. I think time to kill is a devastatingly difficult thing in any first-person shooter, and it always seems like devs struggle with where it should be. You know, if you look at any long-running franchise, Call of Duty, Battlefield, Halo, the time to kill is either like sort of been in this like sweet spot for a couple of games, or it's been fluctuated all over the place. Battlefield, I think, has struggled with this deeply. In fact, I still think the time to kill in Battlefield 5 is too short. I think it's caused a lot of issues for that game. There needs to be a sweet spot. As a player, I'm personally looking for a sweet spot where positioning is always going to matter. Of course it is. Having first shot advantage should matter. If the game's, you know, netcode and connection stuff is functioning appropriately, I should be able to get first shot, land all the shots I need to land, and win that fight. But in the same vein, accuracy should matter, like 30 to 40% as much as positioning does. Being first to fire, great. That's awesome. You want to do that, right? Positioning matters. But if you're first to fire and then you whiff like 4 out of the 6 rounds that you just fired out of your MP5, there's no reason I shouldn't be able to turn around and punish you for that. Time to kill should not be so long that I'm now at a 30% HP disadvantage and there's no way I can come back from it. You know, in some cases, even if I shoot you straight in the head, or unless I shoot you straight in the head. Now it's a good mix, you know. If somebody whiffs with the submachine gun, I can whip around and maybe I land all my shots. Boom, they're done. You know, and it also gives you enough time to slide into cover, to get repositioned. You know, sometimes a person's going to follow you through cover and just rip a hole through the side of that, you know, wooden plank you decided to hide behind, and they've got an AK, but that's okay. That's all a part of the experience. It felt really good. And even when the alpha was clearly having some connection issues and the netcode and the just, you know, hit detection got a little wonky, I should say, things felt really solid. This feels like one of the best Call of Duties in terms of just general hit detection and, you know, overall time to kill. Like, that experience, it rarely ever felt like it was the game's fault that something happened. I almost always blame myself, probably 99.9999% of the time in the 40 hours I played that alpha. It was my fault. I had bad positioning. I missed my shots, and that's a really good feeling. You know, when you've got weapons that feel as good as they do in Modern Warfare, and you go up in a gunfight, and you land those shots, and you get that quick burst off and rip a 5.56 round through a guy's head, plus 2 to his chest, and you get that kill, like, boom, right away, that feels really good. In the same vein, when you turn the corner with that same weapon, and you just, like, spray all over the place, and you're like, what the did I just do? You know, you laugh, at least I do, and then you, like, look at yourself and you say, okay, let's not do that again. We can shoot better than that. And that's a good feeling, like, knowing that it's a part of the performance issue that you might be having is actually on you. And that's just something in the gunplay department that I feel Call of Duty hasn't had in a very long time, man. Like, yeah, sniping. Oh, did I hit the shot or did I miss the shot, right? Sniping's always been like that. But in terms of automatic weapons, Call of Duty for the last 10 years has just felt like a first to fire game. Like, accuracy has barely made a difference. It's really not that hard to hit your shots in previous Call of Duty. So everything is about how many people are you about to go up against, how many people are going to shoot at you, and how many people are you going to be able to shoot before they finally kill you. It's just like this raw numbers game where skill does not have as much influence as you want it to have or as it should have. And that's not the case with this year's Call of Duty thus far. feel really good about it. I'm excited to go hands-on with Gunsmith and to play some of the 6v6 stuff in the open beta. I'm excited to play with more of my friends. But honestly, I like Gunfight so much as a 2v2 mode that if I hated every other mode in Modern Warfare this year, I would buy it and play it for several hundred hours at minimum just for Gunfight. It's like this really well-defined sort of essence of what the new Call of Duty is. And I think if you have one other friend to play it with, when the beta comes up, do not skip on Gunfight. Do yourself a huge favor. Check out all the other modes. Play Gunfight. It's challenging. It's difficult. It's got its own little learning curve, its own little skill ceiling of its own. But I think it provides one of the best first-person shooter competitive experiences ever. Period. Not just for Call of Duty. That pretty much does it for today, guys. I think I could go into like even more detail talking about like just all the other nooks and crannies, but this game is beautiful. It looks great. Even on the base PlayStation 4, I was really impressed with how the game felt. In terms of playing on a controller, I've been playing mouse and keyboard pretty much exclusively for the last year. I've been playing mouse and keyboard for like well over 10 years and controller for, you know, more than that, like 20 years. But I will say this, when I was like, okay, I'm going to play the alpha because I just want to play it. I'll play it on my PlayStation 4 controller because that's all I've got. Just no bumpers, no triggers, nothing fancy. I don't got my paddles. And I went in and the game just felt almost immediately incredible. Like, I haven't played a first-person shooter on controller in a very long time that feels as good as this one does. I think, like, the closest thing to it is Apex Legends, which I think feels great. Like, Respawn does great controller gameplay. This is right up there, if not a little bit better. And I know some of the people who worked at Respawn and the original Infinity Ward are now back at Infinity Ward. So I wonder if they had something to do with that. But it's an amazing game on controller. I can't wait to play it on mouse and keyboard. I haven't been this excited about a first-person shooter, let alone a Call of Duty game, in a very long time. I think there's something extremely special happening here in that core gameplay loop department, and this is very much everything Call of Duty needed going forward. Do yourself a favor, go in with an open mind, expect something different, but with that, you know, sort of same level of accessibility that Call of Duty has always had, with a little bit more of a skill ceiling, and I think it's just what it needed. If you guys have any other questions or concerns or thoughts of your own for me, based on your time in the alpha or your time in the beta, if you're watching this video a couple weeks from now, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. Let's move on to the sort of housekeeping portion of what was already a very, very long video. I just want to say thank you guys for all the support. Everybody on Patreon especially. There's like 20 of you still rocking and rolling over there. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be using that money each and every month to pick up games like Call of Duty and, Borderlands 3 is coming out soon. Definitely want to see what's going on with that. And a bunch of other great games right around the corner that I'm excited to play and to see. That's pretty much where the Patreon money goes at this point. As some of you may or may not know, I have removed monetization from this channel. Just tired of the ads. I'm tired of ads. I'm tired of corporations. I'm not looking to put that shit in your face anymore because I'm tired of seeing it in my face. If you want to support the channel and you feel like the content that you get here is of value, you can always go over to Patreon. It's not at all a requirement. I don't expect it from anyone, but it is totally an option. It is totally there, and I deeply appreciate it if you do. But beyond that, just come hang out. Be awesome in the comment section. Don't be a shithead. Don't be hateful. And yeah, that's it. I'm just here to talk video games, and I hope you guys enjoy what I do with the future of this channel. I ain't going anywhere. May not be putting out a video every single day, but I think there's more value to me sitting down and just letting loose for like 20 minutes straight and really talking about these games with you guys. I think it's going to be awesome in the long run. And that's it for me. Thank you so much for joining me today, everyone. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will see you in the next one.